How did Agent Orange work? Welcome back to The Stuff You Should Think About, the podcast where we take everyday questions, strange facts, and fascinating topics and break them down in just a few minutes. Today's question is, how did Agent Orange work? When you hear the name Agent Orange, you probably think of the Vietnam War. Imagine helicopters flying low over dense jungles, a fine mist spraying over the treetops, entire forests turning brown, leaves falling from branches, land that once looked lush becoming eerily bare. But what exactly was Agent Orange? And how could one chemical strip an entire jungle of its leaves? The answer begins with plants. Every green leaf is like a tiny solar panel. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, plants produce the energy they need to survive through a process called photosynthesis. If you destroy the leaves, you destroy the plant's ability to make food. That was the idea behind Agent Orange. It wasn't designed to poison soldiers directly. It was designed to remove the jungle itself. During the Vietnam War, dense forests provided cover for enemy troops, concealed supply routes, and made it difficult for aircraft to spot movement from above. The U.S. military wanted to eliminate that natural camouflage, so they launched a program called Operation Ranch Hand. Between 1962 and 1971, millions of gallons of herbicides were sprayed across parts of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The most well-known of these chemicals was Agent Orange. The name actually came from the orange stripe painted on the storage barrels. It wasn't orange in color. It was simply identified by the markings on its containers. Agent Orange contained two powerful herbicides. These chemicals mimicked a natural plant hormone called auxin. Normally, auxin helps regulate how plants grow. It tells cells when to divide, when to stretch, when to develop roots and leaves. It's one of the chemical signals that keeps a plant healthy. Agent Orange overwhelmed that system. Imagine your body's hormones suddenly going completely out of control. That's essentially what happened to these plants. Instead of growing normally, they grew uncontrollably. Cells divided at the wrong times. Growth became chaotic. The plant's internal systems collapsed. Within days or weeks, leaves withered, branches died, and entire trees became bare. Without leaves, the plant could no longer produce enough energy through photosynthesis. Eventually, many died. To military planners, this was considered a strategic advantage. Without thick jungle cover, enemy forces became easier to spot from the air. Supply routes hidden beneath the forest canopy became exposed. The fields that could produce food crops were also destroyed. But as the years passed, another problem emerged, a contaminant called dioxin. Specifically, one form known as TCDD. Dioxin wasn't the intended active ingredient. It was created during the manufacturing process. Unfortunately, it turned out to be one of the most toxic chemicals ever studied. Unlike the herbicides themselves, dioxin doesn't break down quickly. It can remain in soil and sediment for years, sometimes even decades. It also accumulates in the food chain: fish, livestock, wildlife, and eventually people. Researchers later linked dioxin exposure to an increased risk of several cancers, immune system disorders, reproductive problems, and birth defects. Many Vietnamese civilians were exposed. So were American, Australian, South Korean, and other Allied veterans who handled or operated around the herbicides. The long-term health effects are still being studied today. Some families have dealt with medical problems that span generations. Because of these health concerns, Agent Orange remains one of the most controversial chemical agents ever used during wartime. Its legacy extends far beyond military history. It also became a lesson in environmental science. Where forests disappear, ecosystems change dramatically. Animals lose habitats, soil becomes more vulnerable to erosion, water quality can decline. Entire food webs can be disrupted. Nature is connected in ways that aren't always obvious until something changes. Today, cleanup efforts continue in some areas where contamination remained especially high. Scientists have developed techniques to remove or safely contain dioxin from affected sites. Environmental restoration projects have also helped forests slowly recover in some regions. Although many landscapes have begun to heal, the human impact remains part of the historical conversation. Agent Orange reminds us that technology can solve one problem while creating others that last far longer than anyone expected. It's a powerful example of how understanding chemistry also means understanding consequences. Sometimes the biggest effects of a science invention aren't seen immediately. They appear years later, or even decades later. And that's something worth thinking about. Thanks for listening to the Stuff You Should Think About. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the podcast and join us next time where we'll answer another question you probably never thought to ask, but you definitely should.